They know that the Clintons are both extremely bright, extremely experienced at testimony. And I think the Republicans are afraid of being embarrassed, which is why they're doing this in private to see whether they can get any little tidbits that they can use against the Clintons.
Bill and Hilary Clinton are about to begin 2 days of sworn testimony to Congress about their relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. Hillary's up today, followed by Bill tomorrow. The Clintons were initially reluctant to give evidence to Congress, but in the end they bowed to pressure. Republicans are likely to press the pair about the images of Bill reclining in a hot tub next to an unidentified person and another of him sitting with his arm around a woman, photographs that attracted great attention when the files were released last December. Neither Mr. or Mrs. Clinton have been accused of wrongdoing, and a spokesman has repeatedly pointed out that Clinton cut ties with Epstein long before the billionaire's conviction for soliciting prostitution in 2006. But let's speak to Hilary Rosen. She's a Democratic strategist, former ally to Hillary Clinton, and a close political friend of both Bill and Hillary Clinton's. First of all, thank you very much for joining me. And for those who don't know what a congressional deposition is, could you tell us how it works?
Sure. The way it works is Congress has what they call oversight ability, which means they have investigative authority. They can use that via a subpoena. They can actually compel people to testify. And it's that committee's decision whether that testimony will be in public or in private. There is no actual enforcement or legislation that comes out of these investigations. The plan is for this congressman, the Republican chair of the committee, his goal obviously is to create some sort of report about their investigation into the Epstein files that attacks Democrats. That's their goal. And that's been their focus of the investigation. They are going down the list of prominent Democrats to try and compel testimony from. The Clintons originally said, we will testify, but only in public. And the committee said, no, we want it in private. Obviously, they know that the Clintons are both extremely bright, extremely experienced at testimony. And I think the Republicans are afraid of being embarrassed, which is why they're doing this in private to see whether they can get any little tidbits that they can use against the Clintons.
You could, of course, respond to that. Well, it's also true that Democrats were hoping that material in these papers would make a case against Donald Trump, and they began to push for that material. It seems that whoever's not actually holding the White House or the reins of power at any given moment pushes the hardest.
That's 100% true and a really important point. There's no question that both sides of the aisle here in America are trying to use the Epstein files as a way to kind of tarnish the other side. But for so many of the people involved in the Epstein files, they're not political. They're business leaders, they're community leaders. There's really nothing inherently political about this other than the fact that there's been a fight over the release of the files.
Isn't it the case, though, that in Britain, this whole issue has completely roiled British politics? We've had, obviously, a member of the royal family be arrested. We've had the ambassador resigning and now also being arrested. It's come to the House of Commons multiple times, putting pressure on the Prime Minister. His Chief of Staff has resigned. His Director of Communications has resigned. And then we look to the United States, where the whole thing took place, and it seems as though, apart from these kind of depositions, nobody really seems to take any political responsibility for it at all. Why do you think that is?
I think that's one of the worst problems that we have right now in American politics, which is that there is no focus on the women, on the crimes, on actual accountability. You look at Britain. Britain's actually a model here for trying to identify where there were real wrongdoing, where there was real crime, and to go after it. And you just don't see that kind of intention here in the U.S. There have been, a few cases where business leaders have been so-called canceled. We saw today, the former Treasury Secretary has resigned his position at Harvard. There have been other leaders that have had to step down from boards and business positions, but no political accountability. None from, the Obama Justice Department, none from the Biden Justice Department, and now none from the Trump Justice Department.
When the former president speaks to a close ally like you, or political ally, and he gives you his word on something like this, doesn't experience make you think, I wonder whether he's doing to me what he kind of previously did to George Stephanopoulos? Does that introduce an element of awkwardness into your political interactions?
I think really today about Hillary Clinton, who is the one testifying today. This is just in many instances one more example of Hillary's reputation being tarnished by her husband. There's no suggestion and no evidence that she ever even met Jeffrey Epstein. She wasn't on those early trips that Bill Clinton took with Jeffrey Epstein on his plane to Africa. Now, granted, those trips were before his convictions, but she had no dealings with this. And yet, because she is such a target, what we call red meat here for the Republicans, they're dragging her into this and sort of forcing her to kind of once again have that Clinton alliance, that unity of Hillary Clinton standing by her man and defending him. And, we'll probably never know the truth about many of these men and Jeffrey Epstein, because there is this, in my view, elite cabal that is, protecting each other's kind of sexual peccadillos. And it's, do I think Bill Clinton could be involved in that as well? For sure. Do I know that there's any underage women involved? Absolutely not. But there's no question that there's a lot of unsavory behavior from all of the men associated there with Jeffrey Epstein.
Is Hillary therefore furious about this being dragged into this again, not just with the Republicans, but also maybe with Bill?
She's very good at identifying the enemy as being a political enemy, and less good at kind of blaming her husband. And we'll never know what goes on in private between the two of them, but you can bet she is not a happy camper today.
What do you think they're going to be asking her, though? I can understand what they're asking him. There are photographs, and he clearly did have a close relationship with Epstein, or it seems like that, and with Ghislaine Maxwell. But what will they ask her?
Well, she did say that she may have met Ghislaine Maxwell a couple of times. So I think they will ask about that. They will ask what she knew about Bill Clinton's interactions, in which case I think she will probably say she didn't know really much at all. And if they're smart, Hillary has long been an advocate for women. She fought at the State Department when she was Secretary of State against child trafficking. She increased funding for protection of women around the world. They probably want to get her on record talking about how terrible it is that these men, associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and to use her comments against all of the other so-called Democrats that they find.
Well, that was Hilary Rosen, the former advisor to Hillary Clinton, commenting on the depositions the Clintons are going to be giving to Congress. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.